Well, welcome back to the Nomad Hedge, everybody. In today's video, we will be taking a look at the charts of Bitcoin. We're going to put some emphasis on Ethereum and take a look at the price action there. So let's begin by taking a look at Bitcoin here on a daily chart. And as we can see, Bitcoin is trading above all key moving averages. And so I highlighted this on X, and we can see that this is a clear breakout here from a cup and handle base. And so it's just a matter of time before we reach new all-time highs. We're also seeing strong participation in the altcoin market. So this is a broad-based rally we're seeing across the board. And so if you take a look at this prior move here, we believe that this has concluded, meaning we got an ABC correction here. And so we should begin a new impulse here of a 1-2 in the Elliott wave terms, and that should set the stage for a new side move towards the upside. We're looking at levels beyond 130,000, maybe 140,000. So either it's going to move towards the 1.618 extension or the 100% extension, but we can take a look at that in another video. So everything is looking constructive here. And on top of that, we do have global money supply, and that's keep growing, and we're seeing the stock market hitting new highs, and so Bitcoin is rising too, for that matter. So if this trend continues, it's just a matter of time before Bitcoin should reach new all-time highs, and that's what this demand model shows. And you can also see that the wallet growth is also on an upward path. So everything is looking constructive here, and that's why our bias is towards the upside. So let's switch over to a weekly chart, and as we can see, Bitcoin has successfully retested the 21 EMA, and as you can see, this green line here, this is the 55 EMA. So this is just confirming that Bitcoin has always been in a bull market ever since it, bounced off this level back in September of 2023. So despite these huge drawdowns here, Bitcoin has been testing the 55 EMA, and it's just been powering higher. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that the money flow index here has reached overbought levels. Now, typically when that happens, it has indicated that a correction is coming. And what I mean by that, you can see that prices here, for instance, back in March of 2024, we had a overbought signal here for the money flow index. And what we saw was basically an early indication that we were going to get a correction. The same thing here, we had price rising, and then we had a negative divergence. And so this could indicate that we could see a correction coming later on. However, the difference this time around is that the other indicators, such as the RSI, the MACDs, these are fairly neutral at this point. So previously they were very overbought. You can see here, for instance, and here. So things are obviously different, but we will keep an eye on the money flow index. We do believe, however, that the breakout here will commence very, very soon, and that Bitcoin should power up much, much higher. However, one thing is that Bitcoin, or the momentum towards the upside, could be somewhat slower. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Now, from a contrarian point of view, the reason why Bitcoin could be powering much, much higher is due to investor capitulation. And you can see here that exchange volume has dropped since early June, and it's been averaging about 5.9 billion monthly, just 7% above the yearly average of 5.5 billion. So this small increase points to fading investor interest and slower network activity, even with stable prices. So you could look at this and say, okay, well, maybe it's time to be bearish, but this is also a contrarian indicator that a lot of people have just given up, and that they're obviously not participating at this point. And just to make matters worse, you also had this story floating around social media that a wallet containing 81,000 Bitcoin worth almost $10 billion haven't been moved over 10 years, and all of a sudden it was moved. So some people digested this and said, okay, well, maybe it's time to sell. And obviously what happened, Bitcoin just powering higher. So stories like this, you should just take them with a grain of salt. And typically when people capitulate, that's typically when, you see just prices move up much, much higher. So this is also a great example that stuff like this should not be taken seriously. On a monthly chart, we can see that Bitcoin is still trading above the 8 EMA, so that's also confirming the bullish bias. We have been taking a look at this trend line here, this higher low trend line, and this has also been circling around social media. But what they don't tell you is that typically when bearish people look at trend lines like this and say, well, the more often you test a trend line, the weaker it gets. But they don't tell you that in respect when it comes to a bull market. So if we would flip this and say, Well, this one is going to break down because we have obviously tested the trend line so many times here. So if that is the case, that means that this trend line here is going to be retested again, and we should likely also break above it because we've tested it so many times now that it has become weaker. So that's my view on this. And so one thing to notice here is that the RSI is obviously very overbought here on a monthly chart. Doesn't mean that we're going to get a correction. It just means that further upside momentum could be slowing down, but we've seen these extreme levels before, so the RSI level can go much higher before we call it the day. And we're looking at the money flow index here, and we're seeing that last time we were at this level, that's when we were currently at this price level here. So Bitcoin managed to power up much higher despite these levels. And so we're also seeing that the Elliott wave oscillator is also at a neutral level here. So just like the weekly chart, we saw fairly neutral levels, and we're looking at the same thing basically on a monthly chart. I don't see anything that's concerning here, and that we obviously will likely break above this trend line here, and that's going to set the stage for a new bull run all the way up to $140,000. So if you want to just keep things simple, you can take a look at the Bitcoin MVRV to see if the trend is still going. So just 12 days ago, the Bitcoin MVRV score bounced off its 365 simple day moving average. So it's showing a solid midterm support level. Now in the past, when the MVRV stays above the 365, the upward trend usually continues. So again, no fancy models needed. Trend following can be very simple. MVRV about 365, the bull trend is still on. So let's move on and take a look at the chart of Ethereum. And as we can see, we have not yet broken above this previous high here, but I believe it's going to be imminent because as we can see here, we're almost breaking above this anchored VWAP. Now we can see that we're above all these key moving averages. However, if we zoom out and anchor this VWAP here towards the all-time highs, we can see that price has been pretty much below this level for a very long time. And so breaking above this is going to be a very strong milestone here for Ethereum. Now we believe that Ethereum could potentially reach $4,000 once this prior high here has been cleared. And the reason why we believe that is because of these CME gaps here. So you won't typically find these in the spot market. If you look at the CME futures for Ethereum, these are gaps that institutions have left behind, and so markets tends to gravitate towards them and fill them. And so the last gap is at $4,000. So that could be a target or resistance line before perhaps seeing the potential for Ethereum to break above all-time highs here and move beyond $4,000. But that's a little bit further into the future. But right now we're looking at this angled VWAP here, and if we're breaking above this, it's just a matter of time before we break out to this prior high here. Now another good thing is that if we take a look at staking, and we can see here that Ethereum staking is hitting a record high with over 35 million ETH locked, including 500,000 ETH just added in early June. So it's showing basically strong confidence and reduced liquid supply. And we can see that in the price action of ETH as well. So accumulation addresses holding 22.8 million ETH also reached an all-time highs. And that's also reinforcing Ethereum's solid long-term fundamentals and investor trust. So that's good news for Ethereum. And so we'll just have to see if price is going to confirm that, and we're seeing a lot of bid here towards the upside. Let's move on to a weekly chart, and we can see here that we are above this POC line, so that's very constructive. And so this anchored VWAP, we're still watching it, and again, if we're breaking above this prior high here and the anchored VWAP, that's also going to set the stage for moving towards this fib 0.618 level. And once we're above that, then we could just target this 4,000 level at the value area highs of this volume profile. Now if we take a look at the money flow index here, we can see that we are starting to reach these overbought levels, but we have been above these levels prior, and so we'll just have to see to what extent that means on a weekly chart. But we're not seeing very overbought levels in the daily, and so we don't believe this is going to be a very big concern for now. So we're closely obviously watching this level, and we're going to keep you guys updated on what's happening next. So let's take a look at Ethereum here on a monthly chart just to get a big picture view. We can see that price action here is looking very constructive here, but also take a look at the indicators. We can see that the MACD here is printing a buy signal, and last time we had a buy signal of this magnitude, you can see how much price just went upside. And so looking at the RSI as well, we found support at this trend line, and we're nowhere near overbought levels, so there's more upside for Ethereum to move before we can start talking about overbought levels on a monthly chart. But But the most interesting indicator that I like to watch here is the Elliott wave oscillator, and it's beginning to squeeze here. So once this breakout confirms, you could see Ethereum begin to thrust higher very, very rapidly. So from a big picture perspective, this is looking very, very constructive here, and we can see that Ethereum has been finding support right where you want it to find support, and we're above this again, this POC line here, meaning the bulls are in charge. So one breakout level to the next, we believe that Ethereum could go beyond $4,000. So beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum, two other cryptocurrencies that we're currently watching is Link or Chainlink. As we can see, Chainlink is briefly trying to get above this POC line here, and it's looking very, very constructive. And we're looking at the same kind of support level that we saw for Ethereum. So this thing has a potential to break out to new all-time highs here, and we're looking for beyond 260% move from the lows here. And the other cryptocurrency that we're watching is Arbitrum, and this thing is just so massively oversold, and so we're also bullish on this coin as well. And if this thing were to break to new all-time highs, we're looking at 550% upside move potentially. So these are two other cryptocurrencies that we remain bullish on. These are a little bit more volatile, and they could be a little bit more risky. For most people, I do believe that Bitcoin and Ethereum could be enough, especially if you use perpetual contracts or futures. You could just lever up these positions, or you could also add to further cryptocurrencies and take advantage of the upside move from other layer 2s as well. So this was pretty much it for today's video. It was just a brief technical overview here for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and we can see here that Bitcoin has broken above to new all-time highs, and we're looking for the next major level to be 120,000 and beyond. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll keep you guys updated. And you can also follow me on X, where I post daily there as well. So have a great one, and I'll see you in the next.